Hello. I am excited to have this conversation focusing on our youngest kiddos as a mom of a third and fifth grader, experiencing so much of what we're about to talk about. I think this is going to be a good one. So I want to start with you, Steve. We heard earlier this morning that mental health struggles are the top problem for kids in school, but so much of that conversation is focused on older kids and teenagers, especially with social media. Why do you think it's important to talk about younger kiddos, and what is Sesame Workshop doing to support their mental health and engage families in that effort?
Okay, well, first of all, it's wonderful to be here, and it's a pleasure to be up here with you and Josh. So, I'm a father of three, but I also, given my job as CEO of Sesame Workshop, my life is spent understanding what are the pressing issues of kids here and around the world. And there is no ambiguity. It's a hard time for adults, but it is a hard time for kids. The thing that is so interesting is that while everyone now recognizes and people talk about emotional well-being and mental health, it's the youngest kids that are often not spoken of. And given our reason for being, we always find it interesting, but it's also our reason for being. Because if you look, the brain science is such that 0 to 5 is where the most development happens. People know that the habits that you learn early are the ones that kind of guide you throughout your life. And people know that if you have challenges learning at a young age, it takes a long time to catch up. And emotional well-being, from a positive perspective, it becomes an enabler to learning. And if you have challenges, it becomes a blocker to learning. So given the brain science, given the impact it has from a lifetime perspective, it needs to be an issue that is talked about. I do believe it has started to change. COVID kind of elevated it overall, but particularly around young kids. Whether we have 73% of parents of kids that we focus on up to 0 to 6, I feel it's the most important issue. The American Academy of Pediatrics, I think in 2021, said it was a crisis as it relates to young kids. And so it is no ambiguity something. From a workshop perspective, we've always been about whole child, and a social emotional has always been a focus as an enabler to learning. I think as the dialogue elevated and as we saw the impact of COVID, we kind of said we need to go much more focused and develop a curriculum specifically about emotional well-being for the youngest kids. And that's what we did. We developed a curriculum, and we did it in a way that is part of our theory of change, which is it's about content across all the multiple touch points, but also the child and the circle of care around them. With the child at the center, which we started last year, leading with a great YouTube special with our Muppets and the YouTube stars, on a mindfulness adventure, teaching them calming sort of approaches, including belly breathing, to going after parents in multiple ways. But we have a great partnership with this Dr. Laurie Santos, who has a podcast, and we've done lessons where Grover, spent time with her talking about the power of self-talk. Abby talked about the magic of gratitude, and Big Bird had a real heart-to-heart conversation about big feelings and how they play out. But at the same time, then we create what we call more resources for parents and caregivers, which we sort of noted the emotional ABCs, which is like if you're a parent, how do you talk to kids about emotions? And if you're a kid, how do you identify the emotions you're going through so you can express if you're going through challenges? And that's just the beginning. Right back in New York right now, the team's on set doing a whole season related to this, and there's a lot more going forward as this becomes a core part of who we are.
And we're going to do some belly breathing at the end of this, right? So giving families the vocabulary and the resources so they know what to look out for is one part of this equation, and a very important part. But we also know that early intervention can really lessen the severity of mental health issues for kids. So that's where you come in, Josh. How Hazel Health partners with schools to reach kids and offer telehealth mental health services to students. Can you tell us why you chose schools as the touch point for this support? And also, how do you ensure that all kids have equitable access in low-income communities specifically and underserved communities?
Yeah, so at Hazel, when we looked at a lot of the challenges that Steve talked about, part of what we saw was a huge access gap. And so on the mental health side, while the data says about 25% of kids should be getting access to care, only about 5% are today, and it's disproportionately poor access for students of color, students from low-income backgrounds. And so when you look at why access is poor, it may be the cost. It may be families who don't have good insurance. It may be transportation. And for so many of our families we talk to, it's just not knowing how to navigate the healthcare system, not even knowing where to start or what to look for. And so we started about 7 years ago with this idea of if we could partner with schools, which not only is it where kids are the majority of the week, but it's a place where there's trusted adults. There's often teachers and counselors who see our kids in very different contexts. And so like Steve, I also have 3 kids. And I remember the day when I got a phone call from our school counselor who, despite all of my background, she was the one that was first noticing when one of my boys was in middle school that he was showing up in a different way and having different behavior. And I needed that person on the ground to connect in. So we partner with them. We're in about 4,000 schools across the country where they can see one of our providers, who are more than half of our providers identify as people of color, more than 40% speak a second language fluently, and we're finding that partnership with school districts is an amazing way to sort of solve a lot of that access gap, particularly for our underserved populations. And we serve all K through 12, but within the K through 3 group that we're focusing on, about 80% of the kids that we're seeing are non-white. About 30% have asked for care in a non-English language. So we think it's a really powerful way to solve that access gap.
And we know that Sesame Workshop has a lot of bilingual material, so cultural competency plays a huge role in this access that you're giving people.
Absolutely, and there's not a more trusted brand I could think of than Sesame Workshop. That when we partner with a school district or try to reach out to families who this may be their first time even hearing about mental health or hearing about these behaviors, to have something so trusted connected to that as a way to understand that is incredibly powerful.
So schools are definitely a key way to reach students, but Hazel Health is still pretty much in its infancy, right? If it was a child, it'd be in 2nd grade,
Absolutely.
right? So when it comes to our Kids for Families, trust is such a big deal, and you just mentioned it, and coming from a brand like Parents, which has been around for nearly 100 years, we know how important that is for families when it comes to their kids. So now you, Hazel Health and Sesame Workshop are partnering. So tell us about this partnership and how you're approaching this issue together and delivering those resources to families.
Yeah,
I'll start with Josh.
Sure. So there's 2 ways that we get kids in for referrals. One is when we might roll out to new school district, parents can call us themselves or engage. But one of the biggest places is a school can make a referral. And the K to 3 grade level, it's the vast majority, about 85% of the kids are referred by the school site. And so for the parents, the first time they hear from us, reaching out to them, even with all that trust, there's often just this big question and a lot of fear for them, as well as for the students themselves, of how do I think about this? And so the ability to partner with Sesame to both give them the language about this, give them content to normalize what this can look like. This first phase for us is about helping make sure between kind of identifying the issue all the way to them starting care if appropriate to make that process much easier.
So we heard in one of the earlier panels about the importance of messaging and who delivers that message. And Sesame's makes the really complex and the scary stuff easier for us to understand and for us as parents to engage with our children and explain things with to our children. So what is Sesame's role in this partnership, Steve?
Yeah, so when we met and started talking, we had a feeling there was a there, but it didn't write itself. And as Josh was articulating their pain points and our goals, and then, what is core to who we are, we started to realize, wow, okay, well, we have 98% awareness and 98% trust. So the trust thing, and we're one of those few brands that, teachers sort of embrace and trust, as well as it may be something the child wants to take home. as a toy. So we're like, okay, trust we have. And then in the core of who we are is an educational content organization, and we always need to partner with people to bring that content to the end user. And knowing, and it's always on our circle of care, is how do we get into teachers and how do we get into students. So we're like, wow, we think that we can help get the trust thing and the awareness, okay, check. We are very good, as you said, we take the complex and make it simple and demystified and more comfortable. There are a lot of hard issues that we try to take on to help parents and children, and we already had a bevy of resources given the work that we had started, and we also thought that our characters and our way of understanding what parents and kids are going through, it could translate even that way as well. So we thought, wow, with our brand, with our content, we can ideally, for what we're calling the pilot phase, because then we have much bigger ambitions, if we can get more people, the conversion rate per se, increase it, and then also have them keep coming back and have them for open to therapy, we can make a great impact. To bring it to life a little bit, we had content already. Part of the resources we were giving that Elmo says, I can be safe, which is Elmo sort of explaining to himself that, I know I'm scared, but I can sort of help sort of manage my own emotions. And, we said, so that's the kind of thing that Josh's team can sort of send out to demystify and to make it sort of like, wow, other people are going through this. So I think I think we have a clip, so we can show you a clip of that, and then I'll tell you some more ways that we're integrating.
Oh, do you like Elmo's blanket fort? Oh, Elmo made it all by himself. Oh, you can come in if you want to. Come on. Yeah. See? Isn't it nice and cozy? Boy, Elmo was feeling a little scared and worried before. So Elmo made this fort with some blankets and soft pillows, and it made Elmo feel safe. Boy, hugging baby David really helped too. It's good to know Elmo can feel safe whenever he's scared or worried. Oh, and you can too. Just remind yourself, I can feel safe. Then go to your safe place. Oh, Elmo will see you later. Elmo's gonna stay in here a little longer. Yeah, Elmo really likes it in here.
So that is something we had, but this is obviously a much more specific sort of usage situation. So we're now developing videos much more tailored. We're doing one called, I guess, the Feelings Helpers that helps, you can imagine a parent says to their child, okay, you're going to a doctor to talk about feelings, a therapist, and the 4-year-old will just look at them and says, what is a therapist? And they probably don't pronounce it correctly. So we're doing a video that's very much demystifying, what a feelings helper is, and and how the experience may be. So by the time they get there, they're in a much more comfort zone, let alone they're actually willing, and in an ideal situation, excited to go have that experience. And I mean, Josh can probably speak to me more, but we're in the pilot phase. But even this script, as we understand, the schedulers and the therapists are like, okay, this is what I need. This is a pushback I've gotten. I don't know how to articulate it, and having it come from characters they already have an affection to that they trust, allows us to focus on the work as opposed to just getting them there.
Absolutely. And then also the language for the parents and the child to have after the session. And as the parents, much more likely at these ages that the parents are participating than maybe a 16-year-old. And so giving them the ability to have a common set of word choice, ability to talk about this stuff, and has been really, really important for parents and kids staying on therapy over time. And I think part of our vision over time is to also make sure that we can provide education and content for schools, so before kids ever need care, they can get access to this kind of information and tools, and hopefully actually reduce the need to even see someone live over time.
This idea of demystifying this is so important. We were talking backstage about how my 3rd grader and her little friends talk about the feelings doctor, the feelings helper, and how just it is what's happening right now with kids. So the sooner we get comfortable talking about it in a way that removes any kind of stigma or shame, the sooner we can get on with getting help, right? So Josh, how do you envision this pilot with Sesame Workshop changing the way kids, caregivers, teachers, and administrators view and access mental health resources?
Yeah, so we talked about the parent side, and now since we have this platform of, again, 4,000 schools, there's about a little bit over 4 million kids now in our partner districts. This ability to actually be able to give, not just for parents, but professional development for school staff is a way that, because often the first person to talk to that parent about that might be their kindergarten teacher, their first grade teacher, and the idea that we could start to bring more, use that platform to bring more and more awareness, content, and tools, we think is a huge impact.
And we have a lot of teachers and the educators in the audience, and so much has been put on teachers. What feedback are you getting?
Yeah, well, I just want to give a huge shout out to all the educators in the room. My wife's elementary age teacher, and the amount that they're being asked to do to support our kids is just beyond educating, just the amount that they do every day, and the amount of change, in our work that we see them needing to do to support kids. And they're excited and want help. And so, I think for us to meet those and care about the mental health of those teachers as much as we do as the students too, part of what they need is an ability to know how to talk to their kids as well, because they often feel as helpless dealing with this issue as the parents and the kids do.
I love this idea of a partnership as well, right? We don't really see a lot of partnerships of two very different organizations. I think you two are the first people on this stage talking about coming together to create impact. And, you're also both dads. We talked about that. And you've made a commitment to all children. I think Secretary Clinton was talking about just really taking that, parenting all children. All children are our children, right? What are you most grateful for when you consider your roles and your mission? Because I feel like a lot of what everybody in this room does is so driven by their personal missions and also, being caregivers in one shape or another. Steve?
Thank you. So, I'm grateful, and sort of thankful, to be here in this room, because that's a statement in itself, and that so many people are all together and recognizing the fact that this is not a problem that any individual can solve or any individual organization can solve by themselves. And that's always the first step, is sort of like recognizing it. It relates to sort of, I'm incredibly energized by this partnership in the vein of like, we're a smallish organization with big ambitions, and we know we can't solve the problems we want to solve by ourselves. And we can't be an expert in everything. And so it's how do you find like-minded individuals, let alone missions, that 1 + 1 can equal 3. And that's not just talk. I mean, that's really sort of, it's hard to do partnerships, but I certainly know it's impossible to take on the issues that we're talking about here today, by ourselves. And, I will be more thankful if out of this comes, people being more inspired to do more things, whether it's things related to this panel or things relating to Josh or some of the other audiences and demographics. I always like to say success in what we're doing is that in 10 years we've sort of met the early childhood children where they are, and that the impact you see in terms of the emotional well-being of teenagers and college students and beyond. And I'm just thankful that so many people are focused on it.
Josh?
Yeah, I think one story sticks with me. So when we first got started in the work with mental health, I remember one of our earliest cases was in the Central Valley of California, and a dad, a middle school girl, and her dad, who was a farm worker, undocumented, but mom had passed away. And so we saw the daughter during that process, but the feedback from the father at the end was not only was he grateful for the care his daughter received, but that we gave him a language, the ability to talk to his daughter and how to grieve and how to navigate that. And if we can partner with our amazing school partners to help parents know how to support their kids. I mean, as a parent of 3, there's nothing that matters more than I feel like my need to support and take care of my kids. If we can play a small role in that, I'm beyond grateful.
Well, I'm grateful for this conversation. Thank you both. This is important work that you're doing, and if you can find some partnerships out there with other people in the audience, go ahead, because This is just amazing. Thank you for including me in this.
I appreciate it. Thanks. All right.